Well, I'm going to start today by telling a little bit about my story. When I was 12 years old, my mom and dad sat us down and told us that we would be moving from Warner Robins, Georgia, which is a tiny town in a southern state in the United States, to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Okay. I grew up in a military home, so I was used to moving, but this move was different for me. My dad had sent us over 2 burqas, one for my mom and I, and a headscarf to wear. We were told to wear it when we went in country, and that's basically all the information I got. Okay. So I remember getting into country and driving into our compound, and think of your neighborhood, and it's surrounded by 15-foot walls and security guards with big guns at every entrance. Nothing scary about that to a 12-year-old. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm never leaving my house, ever. And I didn't. For about the first week, I told my mom I wanted to help her unpack. And if anybody knows me and my mom, that was a cover. I was scared. I didn't know what my compound was like. And I remember one day the doorbell rang, and 3 girls were standing outside. They had heard there was a new girl their age on the compound, and they wanted to see if I would come out and play. That was back in the day when kids actually went out and played instead of, downloading an app on their iPhone and connecting over the internet. And I remember looking around the corner, and I'm like, oh, these are 3 young American girls. They look just like me. I had no idea their names. I had no idea why they were living in Saudi Arabia. I didn't know anything about their family, but I had a connection with them because they made me feel comfortable. So I remember going out, and I remember them showing me the compound and showing me all the cool things that were there for the young Americans. And I often think back to that moment and how many days or even weeks would I have stayed in that house and not explored what potentially I could say were some of the best days of my life. Eventually, we started traveling downtown, and we would go visit the souks. We'd go to the spice souk, the gold souk, the textile souk. And I didn't speak Arabic, but I remember being so curious about the human interaction, the bartering that was going on. And I just became enthralled in how they reacted with each other. A couple months into it, I was in school, I was in the hang of things, and I realized that most of my friends' parents were diplomats. And I thought, oh my God, they have the coolest job ever. They live in a foreign country, they represent their country, they get to learn about new cultures, they get to, travel the world. I want to be a diplomat. I'm 12 years old, I want to be a diplomat. I knew it. I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, we only lived in Saudi Arabia until halfway through my freshman year in high school. 14 years old, you don't have much say in what happens in your family's living situation. So I reluctantly packed up all my worldly belongings and prepared to move back home. And I just remember being so upset with my parents for taking me away from this amazing adventure that I was having. 142 different countries were represented at my school, all 7 continents. I was traveling, I got to experience new cultures, I was taking it all in, and now they were taking that away from me. So I remember moving back to the United States. Luckily, I got to move back to my hometown, Las Vegas, Nevada, small consolation prize. And I enrolled in school in Clark County, just like every other 9th grader. But a piece of me felt like I wasn't like every other 9th grader because I had had all these amazing experiences, and I had this burning inside of me that wanted to go back overseas, and I wanted to explore, and I wanted to travel, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I remember taking out a piece of construction paper, and I was saying, if I'm stuck here in Las Vegas, Nevada, I need to come up with a life plan. I need to come up with it right now. So I remember writing, graduate high school, get into college. When I turn 21, I'm going to take the foreign service exam so I can become a diplomat. Graduate college, become a diplomat, change the world. I had my plan. I was ready to go, set. So I graduated high school, check that one off. Got into college, check that one off too. I was going pretty good. But now I'm 18 years old, and I have 3 years until the next thing on my checklist, and I needed to find something to fill that time. This is about 2003, 2004, and this time in American history there was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of mistrust. We were very divided. There's 2 wars raging. A lot of my family and my high school friends were overseas fighting in them. And a lot of my peers didn't have a voice, and they were frustrated, but they didn't know how to articulate that. I clearly don't have a problem in that situation. And I remember one day in my political science class, and we were getting into this debate, and afterwards my friend Zach came up to me and he was like, "Why don't you just come to our College Democrats chapter?" Zach, I'm sorry, I'm a Republican. I would never come to your chapter. And he was like, just come. If anything, it'll be fun to debate. I'm like, oh, well, I do like that. So I remember going, and I remember having these discussions, and after my talking points were done, and I started actually expressing how I felt about these issues, about the war, about the climate in America, I realized that I was thinking differently than I thought I was just earlier that day. And I can honestly say that my time working in politics, I found my voice. And I knew how to articulate better, and I knew how to communicate and talk to people. And I learned how to organize. I learned how to work in campaigns, and I loved it. Fast forward to my 21st birthday. I now have a major dilemma. I had just completely changed from my original plan. I was supposed to be taking the Foreign Service exam. Politics was never on my sheet, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. But I knew, and this is one thing I learned early in college, that life isn't linear, and life would be so boring if it was one thing after the other. And that was it. There were no choices. There were nothing to influence you. You made a decision, and you had to keep going. So I made a very tough decision at the time to actually not take the Foreign Service exam and pursue a career in politics. And I'm really happy that I did, because soon after graduation, I was hired by the California State Democratic Party to run their statewide youth outreach in the 2008 election. After our victory that November, I soon moved to Washington, D.C., where I became the chief of staff to the Young Democrats of America. During my time as chief of staff, I was able to kind of see across the Atlantic, and I wanted to get back over there. I had this void that was still there from living overseas. And I found opportunities to speak, and I found opportunities to talk about politics, talk about what we did in 2008, what went wrong in 2010. And these were very easy conversations for me to have, because I enjoyed talking to these young people. I enjoyed getting to hear what they thought about American politics, but how that also worked in their own lives. One trip in particular, I was in Morocco. It was December 2010. And I remember it was after an event that we had done. I remember sitting around a table, and I'll never forget, 3 of my closest friends, Reda, Eamon, and Mehdi, were all sitting there. And the discussion went past politics. And it was, what do we want to do as young people? What can the 4 of us realistically do? We are talking about mobilizing thousands of people to vote. We're mobilizing people to support other politicians, but what can we do to actually make a difference? If you think about it, you have 4 kids in their 20s, relatively no money, limited connections and resources. What could we actually do? And I remember we had the news on in the background. And at one point somebody looked up, and across the bottom it said breaking news. And it was about Tunisia. And the Arab Spring had just started. And I remember being in that room, and our conversation switched to, could we really do anything, to, it's now. Now is when we have to do something. And we wanted to figure a way to harness that feeling and do something with it. A couple months later, we gathered about 12 individuals from different countries, different backgrounds, different religions, and we sat them down and we shared our vision. We talked about how we felt that December day, what our vision was, what we wanted to accomplish, and what we thought we could do with young people. We ultimately created a nonprofit called the World Youth Peace Movement. And we included peace in the title because ultimately that's our end goal. But even among the 12 of us, we realized that how we got there, we all felt there was a different path. And then we realized that that was actually the beauty of having these discussions, is there is no right answer, because I want to believe that current world leaders, if there was a right answer, they would have figured it out by now. But it's going to take different thinking. It's going to take thinking longer, more globally, more collaboratively. So we decided that we would design smaller programs that would bring people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and have them discuss global issues. They may be completely black and white differences in their opinions, but at least the dialogue is happening. I think of current world leaders and when they talk about their good friend in another country. They're not good friends because they poked each other on Facebook or they @tweeted each other, right? They're good friends because they sat down and they shared something and they listened to each other. And I guess that's what I'm asking, is for you to listen. And for young people out there to take the opportunity to listen to other people's stories. Because you have no idea how that can help them in their next turning point. You have no idea how you responding to what happened in their life might affect your own turning point. And I think that's actually what the World Youth Peace Movement is trying to accomplish. This idea that we're having a dialogue, we're opening up opportunities, and we're talking to each other. Because in your 20s and 30s, if you can harness that power and have that a ripple effect across the globe, think about how powerful that would be if we have the next Richard Branson, the next president of France, the next prime minister sitting in a room in their 20s. And then when they get to be these established global leaders, they already have this amazing background and global network, and they have an ability to transcend, what's on paper. And they have an emotional connection with people that maybe they're not interacting with on a daily basis. And I think that's something that's always kind of been installed in me and my turning points. Moving to Saudi Arabia, getting these new experiences, opening my eyes to a world of opportunities, being asked to be involved in politics and then making that decision and finding my voice in it, and then being motivated to create a nonprofit when people were fighting in the Arab Spring. And I think that with that, and with this nonprofit and providing more opportunities for people and giving them a chance to have an open dialogue, I believe I'm going to create something that's meaningful. And I have no idea what they're going to take away from that experience, but my hope is they're going to continue to work with me to help and change the world. Thank you.